Welcome, everyone, to the September 19th City Council work session. Slightly different environment than Monday night when we had a huge crowd here. Although this topic is very important too. We're going to talk about strategic neighborhood assessment and planning. But before we do that, Chris, did you want to make an announcement to everyone?
I do. I wanted to invite those fellow councilors that can attend, and I think a couple of the city manager staff will also be at Food for Lane County right after this meeting for the annual United Way Day of Caring project. For those that can make it, will be from the end of this meeting until 4 o'clock, and we'll be packaging the new Food for Lane County protein-rich food product for low-income families, which is a really great new product they've come up with. So if you can come by right after this meeting at Food for Lane County over in West Eugene.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I'll look forward to doing that. All right. So, City Manager,
Thank you, Mayor. And it feels like you're way down the road.
Hello.
Far away. So, Michael, why don't you come on up? We're going to give an update on our SNAPS program.
And I'm going to get out of the
Michael
way.
will do that for us.
You want to pull the tissue boxes away? Okay. Why is it so?
Please introduce yourself.
Yeah. I wonder why it
There
looks
must be
so
another light.
faded. Yeah. You put away something on the touch too much.
There we go. That was still, it still is faded, but.
There we go.
We
We
have
don't know
the
why
faded
we have a
version.
nice green haze on our PowerPoint, but you'll still be able to read it.
The smoke from the fire.
That's it.
Exactly.
Thanks for the cover there. Afternoon, everybody. Thank you for making time on your work session calendar for us to come talk to you about a program that we're really excited about, Strategic Neighborhood Assessment and Planning, or SNAPS, that you'll hear us refer to it. It's a lot easier to say SNAP. My name is Michael Kinnison. I'm the manager of the city's Neighborhood Services Program. And I'm here with Lorna Flormo to my left and Rini Kane to my right. And they're the folks that actually do the work with SNAP. So they're going to be talking to you in more detail about the process and just giving you a really good insight into some of the tangible outcomes that we've had through this process. What I'd like to do is just kind of ground you in kind of where the SNAP program or what it evolved from, and some of the big picture about what we were trying to achieve through SNAPS. So some of you are probably more familiar with this program than others. We've tried to make efforts to involve those counselors that have constituents that are involved in a SNAP, and we've written a few council newsletter articles, but felt it was time. We've got nearly five completed projects under our belt now, and so we thought we'd come talk to you about them. And really what we want to do today, other than info share, is hear from you on any suggestions you might have about how we might improve the program. So SNAPS is a process that provides an important bridge between community needs and desires and city goals, policies, and program objectives. It really empowers neighborhoods to work towards solutions, yet requires strong collaboration and the input of many voices in the process. So I think what you're going to hear throughout our presentation are these common themes of collaboration, building capacity, and broad involvement. It really helps put into practice the ideals embodied in City Council's goal of an effective, accountable municipal government, and some of the key objectives there are working openly and collaboratively with community and achieving measurable and positive outcomes. And I think you'll see that our SNAP program is helping us do all of that. The concept of a neighborhood-based planning process, such as SNAPS, was originally recommended when we conducted a thorough assessment of the Neighborhood Services Program in 2009. And that work, those recommendations from the assessment were intended to reinforce the objectives of the Council's Neighborhood Empowerment Initiative, Key objectives there were building partnerships, collaborative problem solving, and solutions that benefit a broad representation of the community. Also worth mentioning is in 2009, we conducted a community-wide neighborhood survey that collected over 4,600 responses about neighborhood issues in the work of our neighborhood associations. And so through both those pieces of work, common themes that we heard were the importance of broadening participation and involvement in the work of our neighborhood associations, and that there was a perception by some in the community that neighborhood association agendas did not reflect topics of interest to them, and so that was somewhat of a barrier for their participation. So with that in mind, we set about designing a process, borrowing elements from similar successful programs in other communities, and tailoring it to fit our needs here. And in 2010, we rolled out the first SNAP. I think I mentioned we've completed 5. We have 1 pending. And Lorna's going to talk a little bit more about our process in a couple of those projects, and Jarini's going to talk about a few that she's been working on.
Thanks, Michael. So I'm going to highlight some of the key components of the SNAP process by describing a little bit about how we select SNAP projects, and then also some of the basic phases of a SNAP project. Then we'll move on to talking about specific projects that we've completed. First of all, a little bit about who can apply for a SNAP. It can be a neighborhood association, but it can also be a community group or organization looking at neighborhood-based issues or needs. The issue or need may affect part of a neighborhood. It also may be multiple neighborhoods. It's a very flexible process that can meet different needs of different neighborhoods and the community, and you'll get a taste of that when we describe our projects. We have the capacity to do about 2 SNAPs annually, and they each last about 6 to 9 months from start to finish. So the application process is competitive, and I want to briefly describe some of the selection criteria that we look for. We look for an identified need. The application clearly identifies a need with supporting evidence. As part of this, we look at projects that create connections and mutual benefit for existing neighborhoods and community organizations and existing city plans and policies and priorities. We also look for a time and resource commitment. We want a serious investment from the neighborhood or community group that is applying. The city doesn't do a SNAP for a neighborhood. We work in partnership with the group and the neighborhood to do the SNAP. We look for collaboration. We're really upfront about our expectations and commitment to working together collaboratively. We gather appropriate partners and have them come to the table to proactively create solutions and leverage resources so that we're combining efforts for greater effectiveness and efficiency. We also look for a commitment to broad participation, which challenges groups to engage and reach out to not only more, but also different people in their neighborhoods. We also look for a commitment to sustainability values. We challenge groups to think holistically about their proposed projects and efforts in identifying connections and impacts in social equity, economic prosperity, and environmental health. Now I'm going to briefly go through some of the main phases of a SNAP project once it's been selected. There are 6 phases: administrative setup and project scoping, issue and needs assessment, neighborhood outreach and input, work plan development, work plan vetting, and applying for implementation funds. The first phase, administrative setup and...
Can I just interrupt you for just a second?
Sure.
Sorry, you're on a roll.
That's okay.
I'm just noticing.
Oh, a light
You have
flickering.
this flashing light thing going on.
Can we maybe just completely put the floor lights off? Then I think...
I'm not sure that would look really good on the
But on.
tube.
Oh, right. You've got to have that.
I think you need.
It looked like we're being
in the dark.
signaled.
Yeah, right.
Signaled for an emergency or something.
Yeah, right.
Couple people that we're trying to not allow them.
Not sure.
That light has always flickered.
Always?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, then I'm slow to
No, the budget committee meetings it would flicker.
never mind. Go ahead, Laura. Sorry to interrupt you.
Or we can just turn them on all the
Yeah.
way and...
It's okay.
Okay, all right, we'll keep going. So administrative setup and project scoping. This is really working with the group's leadership team to identify gaps and making sure that there's really balanced leadership for the project. And then project scoping, which is done collaboratively between the neighborhood group, city staff, and other partners. This really helps solidify connections to existing city priorities, policies, and programs. And bringing city and other community partners in early, we've found, helps to leverage resources throughout the project and during the plan implementation. Phase 2, issues and needs assessment. We really try to make this data-driven. We start with existing data. For example, Michael mentioned the 2009 Eugene Neighborhood Survey and also the 2011 Neighborhood Analysis and other relevant data and documents. This is another way to integrate and reinforce connections to existing city priorities. So during the assessment, we end up with after the assessment, we end up with a snapshot that's created, and from that we help refine the project need. Phase 3, neighborhood outreach and input. This phase takes the information gathered from during the assessment phase to create an effective outreach plan that will help address how to reach broad interests and also what special populations might be affected, who might be available to help with the neighborhood outreach, and other important aspects that will help gather broad and diverse input on the project. And then the outreach plan is implemented and the input is compiled and processed. And in phase 4, the work plan development, the leadership team, the neighborhood services staff, and other relevant partners and staff work together using the assessment information and the input gathered during the outreach phase to create a roadmap for next steps. Phase 5, work plan vetting. Once the draft work plan is completed, then a group of city staff, which we've called the SNAP liaisons. We have folks identified from all city departments and some divisions throughout the city. And then other relevant city partners also review the draft document and formally give input on the plan to help mesh with current efforts and identify resources and really help generate creative and practical ideas for implementation. And then the outcome is a final work plan. It's actually a document that includes goals and actions and tasks that are prioritized. There's also lead people, measures of success, a timeline, and connection to relevant city programs and community partners, and also identifies opportunities and challenges for each goal. And this is really a working document or a roadmap, like I said, with buy-in from broad stakeholders in the neighborhood and the city and the community that will guide those involved with functional and practical steps towards desired improvements. Phase 6 is applying for implementation funds. After the plan's completed, we offer some seed money to implement an action or task identified under the SNAP work plan goals, so it has to be connected to this document. Now we're going to talk a bit about the SNAP projects that we've worked on so far in our new SNAP starting in October. We only have a little time, so we're just going to hit the highlights. You have a handout that came with your packet that gives a little more detail, and then we'll also have time for questions and answers at the end. So Harlow neighbors applied for SNAP assistance to help create an outreach plan for their neighborhood that would involve more of diverse participants and residents. This began with an assessment of neighborhood demographics using the neighborhood analysis and the Eugene Neighborhood Survey results. Lots of partnerships were created to help facilitate diverse participation. Partnerships were with the University of Oregon, student housing property managers, and Metro Affordable Housing, and they helped reach both low-income and University of Oregon student renters, which are often difficult populations to reach. Multiple neighborhood churches helped promote being a good neighbor and service to the community. Partnerships were developed with many Coburg Road businesses to help support neighborhood activities. Schools and families were involved, which created family-oriented activities that kids and a whole family could take part in. There were also partnerships with Food for Lane County and several other nonprofit organizations that supported the group's community service values. So that's one thing I wanted to highlight about Harlow is their focus on service. It's unique and it creates a positive approach and proactive approach that's attracted many residents to want to give back to their community. For example, the Harlow Serves Coalition collects and distributes food to needy families several times a year in partnership with schools. Multiple school ground and park work days are part of the association's annual plan. The service orientation also really helped create a win-win for U of O students and the neighborhood. U of O students need service credits, and then they can work on a project that benefits the neighborhood. This approach is effective in engaging diverse neighborhood and community stakeholders, such as businesses, faith-based, students from the U of O, affordable housing, and their city councilor, Councilor Poling, participated in several Harlow Serves projects.
There he is.
Yeah, yeah, right. So this project also,
Process ages you.
this project and the group involved built a great amount of capacity during the project in leadership development and branding and organizational structure. They created a new logo, which you can see in slogan and mission to help brand the group in the neighborhood. The organizational structure that was created is very flexible and responsive and helps facilitate ongoing outreach, involvement, and changing interests in the neighborhood. The SNAP process really created a strong, active, and attractive group and a structure and tools to support it. And it could be used as a model for other neighborhood associations wanting to create greater and more diverse participation. The Centro Blair District SNAP project focused on assessing the status and needs of Latino businesses in the Blair Boulevard area of Whitaker and Jefferson West Side neighbors. This SNAP was unique in that the applicant was a community organization. It was actually Centro Latinoamericano. And also, it also bridged two neighborhood association boundaries, Whitaker and Jefferson West Side. There was significant outreach done to Latino businesses and the business community, trying to help, and also to neighborhood folks, to create a better understanding of the networks and connections and overall support for businesses in the area and within the neighborhood. This SNAP also supports the Diversity and Equity Strategic Plan in that it helped create accessible, inclusive, and equitable service delivery. It identified what barriers exist for Latino business owners in accessing business support services in the community. There was also a lot of partnering and leveraging of resources. I'll give you two examples of that. During the assessment phase, we partnered with a University of Oregon professor in an urban revitalization course at the U of O, and the students helped assess barriers for Latino businesses, as well as the overall status of affordable housing, parking, and streetscape preferences that affect the entire business community and residents in the area. The SNAP also culminated in a facade improvement program, which included Wells Fargo Bank and the City of Eugene's Business Development Fund. 3 businesses were renovated during that program, and Mi Tierra, which is on the picture there, which is a Latin American taqueria and carniceria, which is a butcher, on Blair Boulevard between 6th and 7th. They actually won the competition, so they got some extra funds. And that whole facade improvement program brought in over $20,000 in cash, and architect and carpenter volunteer time were donated. And also information and data from this SNAP were used for city grant applications for streetscape improvements and community planning. So I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Rini to talk about the other SNAP projects that we've completed, and the one will begin in October. Rini?
Thanks, Lorna. So I'll echo what Lorna and Mike have said. We're very excited about the SNAP program and the benefits it's brought to our program, not just in developing the SNAP program itself, but it has rippled out into our work and into other neighborhoods. Our first SNAP was with the Train Song Neighbors Neighborhood Association and resulted in a comprehensive work plan to address a number of neighborhood needs. Using results of the 2009 neighborhood survey as a starting point, the leadership team identified the top neighborhood priorities and, working with their neighbors, developed strategies to improve their neighborhood. The strategies they developed were aimed at strengthening families and creating a healthier and safer, more peaceful and connected neighborhood. Pretty ambitious. The leadership team hosted 2 workshops and developed a survey that was distributed throughout the neighborhood and translated into Spanish. As a result of their SNAP work, the Train Song Neighbors has partnered with United Way of Lane County and birth to 3 to host Baby University. So they've leveraged their SNAP grant. As Lorna mentioned, at the end of the work plan, they get some seed money. So Train Song Neighbors has leveraged their SNAP grant in partnership with United Way to provide Baby University at Bethel Community Church. And Baby University consists of drop-in sessions, and they've had 8 neighborhood families participate, and they've reached a total of 11 children. So some of the activities that Baby University provides are peer support for parents who often feel isolated, especially young parents, advice on nutrition and baby health, and supporting positive parent-child development with hands-on activities. The neighborhood has also had a long relationship with Friends of Trees Eugene, formerly known as the Eugene Tree Foundation, and they've used a portion of their SNAP grant to plant trees along Bethel Drive, plant and replant trees at Train Song Park, and part of their grant money is actually supporting trees on private property at low or no cost. So multiple benefits and a couple of really, really strong and growing partnerships. The second SNAP I'll talk about is one that Lorna mentioned. You can involve, in your SNAP, you can involve one neighborhood or more than one neighborhood when either the goals of those neighborhoods or their geography or both intersect. And that's the next example I'll provide. The Santa Clara and River Road community organizations use the SNAP program to help them launch the Santa Clara River Road Outreach and Learning Project. As you're aware, the patchwork of city and county properties in River Road and Santa Clara result in challenges for both residences and for the agencies that provide services, and I would add for elected officials. The 2 neighborhoods share the intention to educate their neighbors about the challenges, learn what's important to their neighbors, and develop recommendations on how to move forward in conversations with their elected officials, service providers, and the community. Scroll SNAP support was primarily technical and included developing outreach activities, mapping and graphics support, serving as a liaison with city staff. And I should note here that I believe for the first time there was an executive, all of the executives met with the neighborhood associations together in some really productive meetings, and that happened twice, which I think impressed everybody who participated. We also compiled comparative tax information for city and county properties in the new neighborhoods, and they use that in their outreach to help their neighbors understand the complexity of the issue around the patchwork of city and county properties. Scroll engaged over 50 volunteers and reached over 700 of their neighbors, using both the latest technology, the internet and Facebook, and some simple techniques and time-honored techniques of one-on-one conversations, hosting living room discussions, and they also, and I think very successfully, met with a small group of their Latino neighbors at a local restaurant, and that relationship has continued with a variety of other activities. It was this neighbor-to-neighbor conversational approach that Scroll took, having those conversations with individuals or small groups that made the most impact in their outreach. Scroll's methods for engaging their neighborhood were so successful that we used them in a 2011 outreach training for other neighborhoods. So they provided a great example for how a neighborhood could go out and provide information, engage people that have never engaged before in neighborhood association work, and get some good results. So their work has prepared them to engage with city staff in area planning, reflecting the Envision Eugene pillars of promoting compact urban development and efficient transportation options, protecting, repairing, and enhancing neighborhood livability, and providing for adaptable, flexible, and collaborative implementation. River Road and Santa Clara are ready for the next phase of their work as SCRIPT, the Santa Clara River Road Implementation Project Team. They are the best at creating acronyms. Continuing to engage their neighborhood stakeholders, service providers, and elected officials. So stay tuned for even more good work from Santa Clara and River Road. The last project I'll talk about before I talk about our next project is one with Active Bethel Citizens Neighborhood Association, and they applied for a SNAP to help them develop neighborhood-scale agriculture projects. And as many of you probably know, ABC has worked a lot on developing neighborhood farm sites. They're really attuned to the issues of food security in their neighborhoods, so this made a whole lot of sense for them. So they call their project Bountiful Bethel, and it includes partnering with Bethel School District and the Communities and Schools Together project, CAST, through the Oregon Research Institute, which is working with Bethel School District to increase children's activity levels, so looking at how to create a more walkable neighborhood, and helping families improve their shopping and eating habits. We also worked with the civic agriculture class at the U of O, and we had 2 top-notch interns helping us with the project. The leadership team reached out to neighbors at Peterson Barn events, neighborhood meetings, and at CAST events that were aimed specifically at engaging Latino families. On the ground, Bountiful Bethel is building a neighborhood farm site at Fairfield Elementary School in partnership with Southtown Rotary. In their SNAP work, they've gained a greater understanding of an important neighborhood issue, food insecurity, developed a plan to engage their neighbors, many of whom had little or no experience with the neighborhood association, and launched an on-the-ground, actually an in-the-ground project that will not only feed their neighbors, but enable them to work together on a shared goal. Last but not least, we are very excited about our next SNAP project. We'll be working with Northeast neighbors to help them gain an understanding of the plans and policies that impact their neighborhood character, form, and future. And we'll be looking at specifically at 2 areas of the neighborhood, around the Delta Highway Beltline interchange and around the Coburg Crescent area, to assess the opportunities and barriers to developing 20-minute neighborhoods. We're working with city staff whose work intersects with the 20-minute neighborhood concept, including planning, sustainability, community development, and transportation staff. This important work will dovetail with Envision Eugene as well as other plans and policies, and the pillars that it best reflects for Envision Eugene are protect, repair, and enhance neighborhood livability, and promote compact urban development and efficient transportation options. The leadership team that has been assembled includes neighborhood residents who are enthusiastic and passionate about working toward a positive future for their neighborhood, and equally enthusiastic members of the business community, such as Dave Hauser from the Chamber of Commerce, local landowner Debbie Jeffries, real estate development professionals, and others. Our goal with the Northeast Neighbors 20-minute neighborhood SNAP is to create a replicable process that can be used in other neighborhoods. And we'll be beginning our work. We're excited to begin our work in October. So, as you can see, SNAP is flexible, adaptable, diverse, and evolving. We learn something new with every project, and sometimes in a project we learn things new at every meeting. It's been really exciting to work with the groups that we've worked with so far. And we're always looking for ways to improve the SNAP process. And we're looking forward to your feedback and your questions today. Thank you.
Thank you. See you again. So I just want to tell you right off that I think these have been very exciting projects, and appreciate very much the work that's been done by staff, and really appreciate the work that's been done by so many members of our community. And the variety of different projects is really impressive. So very fun to learn about. And I would be curious, actually, that once the process, the original SNAP process is through, what happens over time with what they learned, and how does it carry through into the future of the neighborhood. So that would be really interesting from my standpoint. Mike, you're up, and then Betty.
Thank you, Mayor. I echo the mayor's comments. Good job. I know that the depth of work here with some of these is really amazing. I got to participate to some degree with the ones done in Santa Clara and River Road, and have had some preliminary exposure to what's happening with the one with Northeast Neighbors. I didn't know some of the other ones, and I think those are really fascinating, particularly the ones in Bethel, and some of the outcomes that aren't. But when I thought of this, I thought of it more like what Santa Clara and River Road were wanting to do, which was kind of a pre-refinement plan sort of help. But the outcomes that some of those others produced, I think, are really, really wonderful. I guess my questions are twofold. One, how would you, because both the one from Santa Clara River Road and the Northeast Neighbors have an effect of being kind of a refinement plan, light, I guess. How would you characterize the next steps portion that comes out of the SNAPS program compared to how the neighborhood association would have input on that sort of on development previous to the SNAPS program? In other words, does this create much more of a roadmap where city staff is locked into doing what the SNAPS program came up with?
So I'll take a shot of that. So they're not. These really aren't. I wouldn't refer them as pre-refinement plan, because what we're really clear about actually what we can deliver. So we've had some really frank discussions with Northeast Neighbors, for example, about what are reasonable expectations with the process. And we also are real careful to make sure, and from the very start when we're scoping, that we've got the right staff at the table as well. So we've got Carolyn Weiss from planning there. We've got Rob Enterfeld representing transportation planning, so that they can help us understand that we don't. The last thing we want to do is make commitments we can't deliver on. So it's better just let's have that conversation now. And so what the SNAP for Northeast Neighbors won't do, it's not going to be, it's not going to implement specific code changes. It's not going to deliver an overlay zone, or it's not going to do those things. But what it's going to, what it can do, we think, is get really clear on what priorities are in the community as it relates to growth and development and promoting that more compact urban form. And then also look at what are some of the strategies or tools that could help make that happen. What are the incentives maybe that could make that happen? It might identify needs that could eventually relate to addressing it in the code, or it might identify areas in the code that are maybe they're hindering or not helping certain things happen. So what we end up at the end will be a set of recommendations that staff have some feedback in, and we've kind of developed collaboratively. Then the work will start after that to do additional planning. It could be pursuing code changes. It could be who knows what it would be. So what we're not doing is getting kind of the horse before the cart, but we're trying to move forward in a process that staff supports, the neighborhood can support.
Excellent.
Too. And then with the Santa Clara River Road project there, that was similarly what we wanted to do was not. We knew there was a planning process coming down the road, but really what they wanted to do is engage as many folks in their community on the education piece and getting people informed and making those contacts, so that the next phase now they're really set up and are a lot more experienced and savvy at helping to do the outreach, so that when we're getting to the neighborhood-based planning, the neighborhoods are going to be a real asset for the city in moving that forward. But what we didn't end up with there is real detailed hard and fast things that they feel have to happen in a plan.
Okay, excellent. The other piece there would be, I know how hard you did a broad-based outreach with River Road and Santa Clara. I participated in a lot of that, came and had pizza with the maps and the school and all that. Had a lot of fun. I would, with the Northeast Neighbors, encourage you to challenge yourself to even work harder at a broad outreach if you can in that. It's my experience living in that area that there are many neighbors with very wide differences in their points of view. I would wonder how you would handle a predominance of folks who might have an opinion very contrary to existing city goals, as I saw the presentation as trying to mesh within the framework of existing city goals, and certainly that one being a walkable neighborhood, a 20-minute walkable neighborhood. How would you handle it if in the process of doing this you found 40%, a majority of neighbors that didn't really want to live that way?
Everybody looking at me. Could you want me? I don't want to dominate because I know they've got good opinions and perspectives. So, does somebody want to start? And I can certainly.
I mean, that's a great question, and I can reflect back on what we did in what River Road and Santa Clara did, because they were, I think, approaching a topic that had a lot of heat on it and a lot of history. And so I observed that they were pretty adept at really looking at the facts and looking at what the challenges were, and not necessarily getting really embroiled in the political and we haven't seen the implementation of some of their discussion yet. Their recommendations are still recommendations. So, and I don't quite know what to foresee for Northeast neighbors.
They're a new group. They're still working through that sort of.
Right, and we do have a very diverse leadership team. We have neighbors who are really passionate about their neighborhood, and some of them are longtime neighborhood residents. Some of them are very new neighborhood residents, and we have a diversity of business representatives. So I'd say stay tuned. I'm not sure where it will lead.
Go ahead.
I think, some of that is in the outreach as well. We really encouraged them to balance out their leadership team, so we did, and they have representation from St. Vincent de Paul, and we kind of got some bike advocates from the area and a bike advocate from the area. So we encouraged them to do that, and renters. So I think, it kind of depends on who you talk to and how you do the outreach. If you have big town hall meetings, you might not get folks who are interested in that. But if you do a walking tour down by Delta Oaks with this huge senior communities that live there who can't cross the street, then you're going to get a really different perspective on that. And then I think in terms of looking at the folks who may not be quite supportive of wanting to walk to the store or something, you want to look at other tangibles that are embedded in that 20-minute neighborhood concept about amenities being close by, about livability, about beautification, and that kind of thing, and see where there's crossover.
So getting into the details of what it means.
Yeah, I think so, and getting on the ground, really talking to people who need to walk. Like, there's a lot of seniors in that area.
With the Northeast neighbors too.
I didn't. No, I didn't.
It's a generic comment.
The Covert Crescent area there of Northeast neighbors, as you know, that there's a lot of room for growth and additional growth and development, and it's happening now, and there's a lot more room that's coming down the road. So it may be there's a lot of people in that, and that what the project is about is not convincing everybody that they need to live more densely, but we're looking at one area that I would think that most people probably agree doesn't quite work, Delta Oaks, in terms of people feeling safe to do anything other than drive there.
Right.
And the other area where there's
blocks away from me, I know.
Right. And the other area where there's actually there are going to be a lot more residents that aren't there yet, that if they elected to want to live more densely and meet their service needs more readily, how can we make that happen? Not that we're trying to convince everybody else in the neighborhood that they need to live that way. So, but we're not, we'll see what the conversation is in the neighborhood, and what we aren't going to try to do is steer that. We'll just see where that goes. And you make a good point. We want to make sure we're getting as many folks' voices in. Yeah,
there are a lot of folks, as one of my neighborhoods, I can tell you there are a lot of folks in there who are very reticent to participate without pitchforks. I don't know a nicer way to say it.
Yeah. We'll hopefully avoid the pitchforks.
Yeah.
Good heads up.
Betty, you're next.
Thank you. Is South Eugene eligible for any of this?
Sure.
Yep.
Every
Wonderful.
neighborhood association, actually any neighborhood-based group, so it doesn't even have to be a neighborhood association. We just ask they collaborate.
Well, this is very appropriate since I'm just going to bring up some concerns of people about safety. Two places, one by Harris, what used to be Harris School, Camas Ridge. It's very dangerous for children and adults both to cross 30th Avenue. And that's a real safety measure. And there's another in South Eugene, which isn't, I haven't heard as much about, but some from Cascade Manor to go to the shopping center. It's very dangerous. There is a walk sign there, but it lasts about just a few seconds, and anyone who isn't fast can't get across there, especially if they're using a walker or a wheelchair, or if they've had an injury. You almost have to run to get across. And so I wonder, I guess, how would one go about doing something about those things? The school thing especially, I think, is urgent.
One of the things we will do, and I know Beth takes notes on this, we will touch bases with at least the public works folks to take a look at particularly the one on the time the walk signal is on. That doesn't take a snap to evaluate that, so we'll follow up on.
I was just reminded of that. That should be easy. I have mentioned it before to Public Works, but the one about the school, and I think people on both sides are concerned, and it would be Alan's ward and my ward between us. And I just cringe when I walk my dog in the morning and see all those little kids going to school who live on the south side of 30th and have to go to that school. And there are lots of them, especially since our school closed.
I have a first grader that goes to Camas Ridge, and we live on the south side. I do that every morning and every afternoon. So, what we try to do when we hear about things like this, we try to kind of let people know, we have this program you can apply for, come talk to us about it. And so we're always kind of throwing it out there, different opportunities. And I have mentioned that to some of the folks who are concerned about that.
There's a person in the room today who's concerned.
We don't, and I think as John mentioned, a lot of this is kind of the thing we do a lot anyway, and it doesn't have to be a formal process. If neighbors come to us and have an issue, it's just part of what we do is let's try to get the right folks down in the city that can address those kind of traffic safety issues and bring everybody together and try to find out what that is and see if we can come up with some kind of solution. So if there's somebody else that we could follow up with there, we could certainly do that as well.
She's right here.
Okay.
Judy.
Great. We should get your contact information.
On 30th and University.
Okay.
Yeah, 30.
Look, I'll give you a card and we can maybe connect after.
I would love
Great.
that. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you. That's all I have.
And I do notice when I'm coming down that hill that there's a lot more signage than there used to be to ask people to slow down. I don't know if they're slowing down.
Doesn't work.
A lot of them more signage to ask them to slow down.
When I said I was through, but when I come into town from being out at Mount Pisgah, it's dangerous to slow down to the traffic, to the required speed, because people behind me are running over me almost, honking their horns if I slow down to 35 and then 30.
A little
Through
bit
now.
of traffic
Thank you.
analysis there. Okay, Alan, you're next.
So it's Judy Moore. She's right behind you. 30th and University crosswalk. And that is so it's right at the school. So my question is about refinement plans, and we talked about refinement plans a couple of years back, and trying to get us to be able to get to refinement plans. And they're extremely valuable things, and just had that reinforced the other day in my neighborhood, where a refinement plan that was in place in the Fairmount neighborhood prevented what I thought was an inappropriate use of land use change, and was upheld at Luba. The developer kept taking it up the food chain, and the refinement plan was what saved our neighborhood's bacon. And it disallowed this upzoning in this particular area because of the refinement plan. And I'm kind of wondering, and this I don't know, maybe John, you can help with this, where we are on being able to get refinement plans. I know they're expensive. We talked about that. They're hard to do. We don't have the resources. And we talked about different ways of being able to get neighborhoods to participate in them with their volunteer time or other things similar to what you're doing at SNAP. And I'm wondering how SNAP can relate to that, and how the South University neighborhood is interested in doing something like this. They don't have a refinement plan, and they would like to move that way. And it's really around the land use stuff as opposed to neighborhood services and human services. So,
May I? Or do you?
As you remember from the Envision Eugene process, what we said with respect to neighborhood livability, that the two neighborhood areas that are the highest out of the gate neighborhood plans, and whether they're a refinement plan, whatever they're called, it is what it is. But one is Santa Clara River Road, and the other is the University neighborhoods, because that's where a lot of the pressure is at the moment for these kinds of things. I think the scroll
but a refinement plan is a legal document that has weight. I'm not sure that's, hopefully that's kind of where we'll go with that process, but also just refinement plans in general have that legal weight, and that's what saved us at Luba in the Fairmont neighborhood case.
Right, so the intent is to have the land use planning done within the neighborhood that then everybody can rely on and move forward on. And so not being Emily Jerome on the legal piece, I'm not sure what all the nuances of that are, but the intent is to have a land use plan in which the neighbor, all the stakeholders can agree, whether they're the commercial interest, the neighborhood interest, the city interest within a particular area. It could be the entire neighborhood or a particular area in the neighborhood. I think the scroll process is, at least from my mind, one of the positive pieces out of that is I think it informs the conversation that will occur and continue to occur in Santa Clara and River Road as they actually go through a more formal planning process. Not only a neighborhood plan, but of course River Road Santa Clara has a multitude of complex issues, whether it's annexation, whether it is current agreements, whether it's other districts that are out there, and so all of that helps inform that. And so that's how I see some of that tie between a SNAP, in this case River Road Santa Clara, and helping to inform the more formal process. And the university neighborhoods, it seems like something similar could be done with that. I don't know if they've applied for SNAPs or they have talked about SNAPs or exactly what the neighborhoods have thought about in that respect.
You guys talked.
Yeah, I could speak to that a little bit. So we've had a number of conversations with some neighborhoods and with planning staff about how can a SNAP process help inform other kinds of neighborhood-based planning processes that we've been talking about doing. It could be a refinement plan, it could, whatever that is. And that's kind of new ground. We're trying to figure that out. And that's one reason we're really excited about Northeast Neighbors, is because initially Northeast Neighbors really, they're like, we want a refinement plan too. Ours is, the Willa-Kinsey area plan is pretty dated. And so we knew we didn't have that resource, but that led to the conversation, okay, well, what could a SNAP do that could address planning-related issues? And when we had conversations with Northeast Neighbors and with the Planning Division, we really kind of realized that some of their concerns really could be, really kind of were embodied in the idea of how can we plan for more compact urban form, plan ahead to meet transportation needs. And it seemed like a SNAP was a good fit, since we don't really have a process for 20-minute neighborhoods either. So this is really kind of a pilot to figure out, I think, how a SNAP could support other planning processes that probably need to follow. And South SUNA, the university area neighborhoods, I think we could do a similar process with a SNAP, and we had conversations with them that was an option, a resource. They didn't apply, so this is a competitive process, so we kind of go with who throws their hat in the ring. So I think we're going to we learned from Scroll, we're going to learn from Northeast Neighbors, and I think we're going to develop somewhat of a model with this, that this is a logical first step in getting a community set up to do other kinds of neighborhood-based planning.
Of course, they all want it to happen in 3 months. Right. So
yeah.
This is the process. How many application periods are there a year for SNAP? One?
Well, we do, generally, it takes 6 to 9 plus months to complete a SNAP. So really, This year, we're doing just a one, because Northeast Neighbors, we're anticipating is going to be a bigger project. We had been doing two.
Mr. Allen?
Well, when are they? Do you have a regular?
No, we actually, what we've done, initially we were trying to get a set schedule, and what we realized really quickly is that until you really scope and get into project, you don't really know how long it's going to take, and we felt like we were putting these arbitrary timelines, and we wanted to allow enough time to do the work that needed to be done. So we don't even open the process up until we are well into that process and we see the end of the road. So
You have finite resources and you allocate them through the whole competitive process completely.
Right.
And you have to wait to free up resources.
Exactly. I mean, these are your resources here, and they've got other things on the work plan, so.
We're in good
Finite.
hands.
And so, yeah, we want to be ready, and, but our experience is, I would predict that the Northeast Neighbor SNAP, well, it's going to be at least 9 months for most of that to get done.
Okay.
And before I call on Andrea, my thought is, and I don't know how this would work, but I've heard it talked about. The fear is how much will happen while you're waiting to queue up. So that's sort of the fear that's out there. So the next question from my point of view is then, is there anything you can do to put something on action on hold while you get to that place? You understand what I'm saying, John?
Yeah, my guess is the answer is yes, you can. The question would be, is it could get put on hold for years because
Right. On the other hand, you could do nothing and things would just roll forward because there's nothing to stop them from.
Right, so
from
it's
rolling
a
forward.
delicate balance, which is
Yeah.
why, of course, those two neighborhood areas we wanted to try to move out first, since there's more immediate pressure on those two. And even those take time; they're not immediate solutions either. So it's. I wish there were a way to instantly do all of them. Unfortunately, there just isn't, either on the SNAP side or on the planning side. That also requires quite a bit of resources to do that. So. The answer is I'm sure there's a legal way to do what you're talking about. I think it's how do you balance that with all of the needs.
And just a final, we can talk about this offline, but just a final thought about that is, I see legal action is probably when all else has been tried most of the time. So I would be looking for something that could meet that sense of emergency that some parts of some neighborhoods have while we're getting to them. And I don't know what that might look like, but it just seems to me worth trying to think about. And you wouldn't want it to be too big or too broad because everybody would be applying it to anything and everything, because people have a whole lot of different ideas about what is acceptable to them and not. But just thinking about that density issue and just thinking about those neighborhoods who feel like if they're under such pressure to to consider what they maintain, what they believe is maintaining their livability, and that they're afraid will take too long, and things will be really important things will be lost to the neighborhood. So if there's any strategy that anybody knows of that's being used anywhere that makes sense, I think we ought to bring it up to the front of the queue and see if we can figure a way to give people a little space till we can deal with things. Andrea.
Thank you, Mayor. So thank you guys for coming. I have a few comments about the school team and the leadership team and all. I really appreciate the work that you guys have done. It's like you're the face of the city to this community, these community neighborhood groups, and I think it's really important that they have a conduit to the city. I mean, they have us as counselors and they have John, but really you guys are like on the front line addressing the issues that are concerned of quality of life issues, and I really appreciate that. The team approach sounds fabulous. So you have people from other service lines that are involved in this, is that correct? Other parts of the city?
Yeah, the leadership team is generally a lot of folks from the neighborhood, and we help them balance that out if we see that there might be other stakeholder groups that might not be at the table. And then on occasion, we have had a city staff sit on the leadership team. Denny Bro from Business Development Fund sat on the Centro SNAP leadership team just because he had so much connection to business services in Eugene, small business services. other ones it hasn't, but even if they're not on the leadership team, the broader team is, yes, we have liaisons throughout the city in different departments and divisions that we start consulting with right off the bat. In fact, they help us kind of look through the applications and say, what does this connect to? How does this work with your work plan? What do you think about this? And then they're really involved throughout, just to what degree depends on the project.
That's good. I mean, I appreciate that, because I think that so many times when we hear complaints, people feel like they're like, well, they don't get an answer. Right. And it sounds to me like you're giving them answers. They may not like what they are, but at least you're giving them an answer instead of like having them call and not get a response or not know who to go to or who to speak to. So I think that part of it's really good.
We've had to do some kind of coaching and bringing along within the organization too in this process, because everything's shrinking resources, everybody's got a lot on their plate, and so here we are coming along with the SNAP saying, hey, this group wants to do this group wants to do that. So it's a natural reaction for people to say, whoa, we can't do that. But the approach we take, and I think Rini coined this term, and we say it a lot, is we ask that folks don't react that way initially, but take a more kind of a yes-if approach. So, okay, yeah, good idea. Here's what it's going to take, And that's where the hard conversations, but they're honest conversations about how you can be more successful and get there. And then we produce something that isn't just this utopian vision. It doesn't ever do anything.
Well, that's awesome, because I think that people just want direct, honest answers instead of just, oh, we can't do that. It's good to be able to say, yeah, we can do that, but this is what it's going to cost you. I know when my neighborhood comes to do about stuff, I just encourage them, if they're going to work on something, that is the most important thing that you're going to want to work on, because you're going to use all your political capital this time for this project. So just think about it. So before I run out of time, I just wanted to make some comments. Did you see the Central Blair district? I kind of knew that was going on anecdotally, but I didn't really get them. I didn't read the numbers. I'm sure I got them. The Train Song neighbors are still working hard, and it's really nice. I've met with Pastor Brad a couple times, and he's just really excited to be hosting the Baby University is what it is. I think that's really positive. As far as Santa Clara and River Road go, they're kind of a different entity on their own. They are very professional, and they know what they want, and they know how to obtain it. They have a lot of retired educators, but they also did the 2 or 3 year white paper project that we did when I first got on council, and that was very grueling, and a lot of the stuff that I think that was kind of a basis for them to go from. I know they did a lot more outreach, and I think that really they're working hard to kind of try and shift the culture about the city of Eugene out that way, and I really think they've worked really hard at it, and I really hope they're successful. And I don't know what success looks like for them, but I hope that they are successful in whatever they want to do. And as far as ABC goes, that is really, that community out there is just such a hardworking community, and it would be like them to worry about people eating, and they don't really have these concerns about growth or compact or this or that. They just are worried about essential services for their community, and food is one of them, and they see a lot of it because we have so many of the social service agencies along Highway 99 that really impact the schools, and and the churches out there too really do a good job on their own without any involvement from any city organizations. They all work pretty hard together to meet the needs of the community.
George.
I just have a great presentation, by the way. Thanks for catching us up. You've been extraordinarily busy and look like you're getting lots of good results and lots of participation. It's fabulous. Thanks for the presentation. I just had a kind of a quick question about, I was really interested in actually Bethel citizens, like you said, concern with local food production, and I'm just wondering if maybe this is too recent, but have they been developing neighborhood gardens out there?
There's a group in the ABC neighborhood called ECOS, and it's a nonprofit. Alita Miller, who is one of the co-chairs of ABC, is leading ECOS, and they've actually developed a neighborhood farm in the neighborhood in working with a private landowner. And so what they're trying to do is really take the work that ECOS has done with a private landowner and and encourage that in other parts of the neighborhood. And so part of what we looked at was what's a good site, what's a good partnership, and then how do you reach out to people around that site to get them interested and involved and make sure that the site meets their needs. So it's really a continuation of the work that's already being done in the neighborhood, but also an expansion of that to reach other partners.
Great. Where do you know where that farm is? Where the
You know,
one
I don't.
that's been developed? Okay.
I don't know.
Well, I'll ask
Well,
around.
find out.
I'll find out. Yeah, please do. I'd like to know. I'd like to cruise
The
by.
new site is at Fairfield Elementary School.
Okay.
I thought you meant the existing site, but the new site is at Fairfield Elementary School. It is on the northeast corner of Royal
Okay.
and Fairfield. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Sure.
I think Fairfield School's on the list of the bond.
I wasn't going to say anything, Mayor, but
I will.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, they are. They're looking.
So there is some kind of connection there between of envisioning of a rebuilding of Fairfield and a garden there too. Combination. So I'm curious, are there things that you would identify as lessons learned in terms of things that you tried that didn't work as well?
I think initially, I'll be curious to hear what you guys say. We were really unrealistic about how long it takes to get it done. So we're really moving at the pace of the volunteer folks we're working with. And so we had to really readjust our expectations there. That's one thing. that
And
comes to mind.
not only the volunteer groups, but just getting it on the plate of different city folks too, to get everybody together and be able to get all the input that we need. So, yeah.
I think it's also been really interesting to look at how different engagement techniques work. Some of them work really well, and some of them we kind of scratch our heads afterwards and say, that wasn't quite as successful as we would have liked, and how can we do it differently next time? So, there are lots of variables when you do engagement of time, date, who's available on a Tuesday, that kind of thing.
So do you calculate, because I think you have to, different neighborhoods have different capacities. They have different interests, but they also have different capacity. They have different numbers of people who have the time in their lives to give to things, and it's very different. So although I think, for example, Train Song's done a great job, I also recognize that most of the folks that I know in that area work long hours and have to eke out their extra time. So I don't know within this SNAP process whether you really think about how neighborhoods are different and what you might need to offer one neighborhood that another neighborhood wouldn't need that same thing because their lives are so different.
We do. We don't really have a boilerplate. We have a very flexible process, which I kind of outlined in the presentation at the beginning, but we leave a lot of room for different projects, different capacities, different issues. So we kind of take that very general process and then morph it to the needs of the project or the neighborhood. And then, one thing too that we've really learned right off the bat and stuff too was the importance of helping a neighborhood prioritize and really kind of focus in, because like Councilor Ortiz said, you got to take your resources and use them and focus them on something, and especially for a neighborhood that might not have as much capacity in terms of time and stuff. Focusing in is going to be really important, and because we want them to succeed and see that they did the SNAP process and did all this work, and then they're actually seeing something happen from it.
We've also developed we call kind of I think we call it a prescription for a healthy neighborhood association. So if we're working with a neighborhood group, one of the things they have to agree to is to go through this kind of internal assessment about their strengths and their challenges and where they might need extra support. And so we kind of flag those things, and then we think about how can we help them if it's a training issue, whatever it is, how can we help them be more strengthen their group and so they can be more successful with implementing wherever we land.
to
And I
that.
think that that addresses the question that you posed, Mayor Piercy, what happens afterwards?
Right.
Is that the neighborhood has this idea of where they might need assistance in strengthening their neighborhood association or organization in one area where they're really strong, so that they can either get training or gain more experience or bring other people onto their board who have those skills so that they have a stronger leadership.
And to tag on to that, how does it happen after? I mean, they do, this is almost like a manual that they get. I mean, it's really a working document. It's got, I can pass it around if you want to look at it, but it's got tasks associated with, and check boxes for the tasks and who's in charge. And so really, if they get new people on their board or in their group, they can kind of always refer back to this, where are we at? Where are we going? And who do we need to talk to? Yeah.
Great. Okay, Alan and Andrea.
So what would you guys need in order to ramp up this, make it not only more capacity, but also take it kind of the next level of types of SNAP plans? What would you guys need besides Calvin and Hobbes replicator? What do you guys?
Well, that's a hard question, because I think it does come down to the capacity we have to do the work. So I think that we're becoming more effective as we're getting out in the organization, and so certainly the more support we have internally in our organization and buy-in to this is a valid process, it's got legitimate outreach, so that whatever they're coming up with, we're confident it reflects community needs. The more acceptance we have in that in the organization and understanding of that, the more effective we are, and we're constantly building that kind of support, and I think we're in a pretty good place now, so that if you talk in the organization, you say SNAPs, people know what it is. So I mean, short of on more resource to be able to do it, I'm not sure exactly what else we think we might need. But
And we do really recruit interns from, in fact, one of our new interns is here today, and another two of our interns here today. But we've really had amazing interns
success.
that have put in tremendous hours helping on all of our SNAPs. So thank you.
That's great. Andrea?
So you kind of spoke a little bit to my questions around capacity building for neighborhood groups, because if I remember correctly, back in the day, they used to take the chair and the new chairs and give them orientation and training and stuff. But what I'm thinking I'm hearing you say is that you try and disperse that amongst the whole group. Is that what I heard?
we do an annual orientation still. We do that same process to any new board members. And then, yes, and as part of the SNAP, we're working with the group, the team, and not any.
So are other community members, do they have the access to this yearly training that you do? Like if there was 4 or 5 people from the new neighborhood that's coming, Northeast neighbors, are they going to have that availability? I think that's really important, because I know that when we started to reconstitute Trainsom, there was a lot of unknowns for the people and really kind of concerns not knowing the boundaries, just like when we put people on our boards and commissions for the city, they think they're going to be able to really do something, and really the reality is, your advisory committee to the city council, and so that's good that they have that capacity. And I know that as we go down the road, that you all will be able to do this sooner. I mean, your processes will get better and more streamlined, and so I'm probably speaking on the money that this is probably, some community members might not see it as a essential service, but quality of life issues is kind of what we need to address ourselves with. And so I think as time goes on, you're going to find some tricks to do this work and not take 9 months. But it all depends on the community that you're trying to work with also. So thank you guys once again.
I just want to wrap this up by saying, to me, this feels like a real step up for the work that we've been doing in the neighborhoods. It's a more sophisticated. I mean, we're just building on our experience and getting hopefully better from every direction. And this feels like that to me, and it feels like it's answering the question that a lot of our counselors have had over time about how we better engage our neighborhoods and involve more people, that we just, I don't mean this just because people will always come when they've got a hot issue that they care about for their neighborhood, but I also think that we've been looking for a long time about ways that people could get involved in neighborhoods that might not normally get involved in the neighborhood association. So this is really a great step in that, not only waiting for people to come, but reaching out and touching people and letting them know what role the city has in their neighborhood and the kind of response the city will have to the things they care about in their neighborhood. So it feels like a really good step in the right direction in what I've heard this council be interested in. And I do think we still, I don't see this going away in the near future. We're going to continue to have capacity issues. That's just the world that we live in, but trying to do the very best with what we've got and helping our neighborhoods do the very best with what they've got, I think is something we are all deeply interested in. So the more that we can share this information and learn from each other and sort of build on what we've got, I think that's a great thing for our city. So just we're all appreciating this a great deal. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, that's it for today, I think.
Chris, where is it?